So now that we have all of our resources, we're going to start by making all of the extrusion pieces that we're going to need for the drivetrain. So one of the first extrusion pieces that we're actually going to need is one piece that is 405 millimeters. So the problem right now is that this piece right here is 420 millimeters right now. So if I press I and check the inspect tool and check how long this is, we'll see that it's 420 millimeters. So to mitigate that, we're going to start by cutting off some of the end of this. So we're going to select on sketch up here. We're going to click on this face, and we're going to create a center rectangle, which is here, and make a 15 by 15 square. We're making a 15 by 15 square because the edges of the extrusion are 15 by 15. So then we press stop sketch, zoom out, and since we have 420 millimeters, we want to take out 15 millimeters. So if we click the face, make sure to click this face so you actually cut the extrusion, and we select negative 15 millimeters, and press enter. That'll give us our piece of 405 millimeters. It's important to make sure that you save this as a new file so that you're not modifying the old one. So if we go here, save as, and then we save this as 405 millimeter extrusion, we have our first piece of extrusion. Now we're going to do this with some more pieces. Cut this part, Patrick. Just need to check the length. Ah. 30. All right, start from here, Patrick. So now that we have this 405 millimeter piece, we're going to open up our extrusion file again. And the next piece that we're going to make is 65 millimeters. So we'll do the same thing, but instead of cutting only 15 millimeters, we'll make the same rectangle. 15. Select the face, and instead of cutting, select 65 millimeters, and instead of cutting 65 millimeters, we're going to choose intersect, which will only keep those 65 millimeters. Then we'll save as, we'll save this as 65 millimeter extrusion, and do the same for the next one. So now that we have our 65 millimeter piece, we're going to make one that's 230 millimeters. So we open again our full piece of extrusion, go to Model, Create Sketch, make a rectangle. Actually, we don't need. Stop sketch, extrude, and make sure to intersect 230 millimeters. Oh, making sure, this is a good lesson, make sure that you're extruding in the right direction. So right now it's 230 millimeters, and it's trying to find a body in this direction, but it's not finding anything, so we need to change this to negative 230 millimeters, and that'll give us the piece that we want. Finally, save as always, and then rename this to 230 millimeters extrusion. All right, that should be the first 3 parts. All right, so now that we have all our extrusion pieces, I'm going to start by making an assembly. An assembly is a amalgamation of all the parts that we make, and we make it into one big model so that we can see the entire drivetrain in one file. So I'm going to start by making a new design and saving it as drivetrain assembly. It's important to save before you start making an assembly, else Fusion will not let you import the files that we just made. So now that we have the files, the first piece that I'm going to take is this piece, the 420 millimeter piece. I'm going to press Insert into Current Design. Select where I want it. At this point, I don't want to move it yet, so I'll just press Enter as I press in. And the first thing I like to do when I make assemblies is I like to ground the first component so that nothing moves. The way this is set right now, if I drag this piece around, it can move around, and we don't necessarily want that. So the first thing I like to do when I'm making an assembly is right-click the component, like this, and select the first section, ground. This will make it so you can't move the first piece, and anything that you attach to it won't move as well. So now that we have this 420 millimeter piece, which will be our back rail, we want to start getting our side rails. So our 405 millimeter extrusion rails are going to be our side rails. Since the extrusion here is 15 millimeters wide, our 405 millimeter extrusion will add to that to make it a 420 by 420 square. So if we insert into current design our 405 millimeter, and we rotate it into the right orientation by selecting this wheel and rotating 90 degrees. Press Enter, and here we have our first piece. So now that we have our piece, we want to align it to this corner so that it sits flush. So the first thing we're going to do is make a joint. A joint is the way we connect parts in an assembly. It makes sure that nothing moves the way that we don't want it to. So I'm just going to press here J, select planar, and select on this face. You'll get a lot of points, but if you try, the ideal would be to try and get one on that's not the circles. Once we've selected a face, we'll go here and select the other face that we want to attach this to. In this case, this one. And what you'll see happen is that the piece that we just selected will fly to the 2 points that we selected. If we press OK, what you'll see is that this piece can't move past the point that we selected. If I drag this here, it won't let me. So if we make a bunch of joints, it'll make sure that everything is fixed and that it doesn't move, and it doesn't move. So the next joint that we'll want to make is the top faces. So I'll select here and here, select yes, and then, so right now what it's doing is it's colliding the two faces. What we want to happen is we want these two faces to sit flush. So we'll hit the flip button, which will make sure that those two faces are flush with each other rather than on top of each other. Finally, we'll do one last joint to make sure to connect these two faces. So select here. Make sure to select one of the dots that Fusion displays, and then select any one of these corners, making sure, and select any one of these corners. And then again, we don't want it to sit parallel, we want it to sit flush. Hit the flip button, and that is our first corner. So now, if I move this around, you'll see that nothing moves because we've grounded this component. If I unground this component and move it around, the whole assembly moves because we've just joined these two pieces. I don't want to unground it, so I'm just going to Command C a few times. And that is our first corner. Make sure to save. Now from here, we'll build some more corners and make sure to connect everything so that we get our entire frame perimeter.